Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast with Benji Naesen. I've been sent back to my cell, as you can see, although it does have a boom stand and a better camera, so swings and roundabouts. This is the DSM Women's Team 2021 preview, a team where I think the first ever pro interview I did just about was Liana Lippert back in January 2020, before she won Cadel Evans road race. And I always follow them pretty closely. But how are you going, Benji? I see you're at your standing desk today. They're the rafters in your roof.
Yeah, I just feel like standing up for a bit. And someone in the comments thought I was shorter than you, so I wanted to prove that it's not the case, because this is the ceiling, to be clear. Yeah, people on the podcast platforms obviously can't see that, but...
Yeah, I think Benji's at least 20 centimeters taller than me. But hopefully my mic is sounding better too. If you want Lanterne Rouge ASMR, I guess we can do a spin-off channel if there's enough demand. But anyway, on to their 2020 season review. I think at least 6 wins. I mean, we use PCS, I think, just for consistency, because it's the main database. But for the women's races, as Benji pointed out to me before we started recording, it's hit and miss, because it's saying 5 wins for Sunweb women's team in 2020, but it's missing a Lorena Wiebes win at the Spa-Omloop van het Hageland in March, which is a 1-1 race. So yeah, it's maybe it's not just 6 wins, it could even be more than that. We haven't gone through every single rider's palmares for 2020. But anyway, it seems roughly about right. Wins at Cadel Evans, as I said, Grote Prijs Euromat, AG Driedags Brugge de Pana, and the Ferretizit Challenge Stage 1 by La Vuelta. Those last 3 wins were from Lorena Wiebes, and the Cadel Evans was from Lippert. Obviously, Juliette Lebu won the French Women's ITT National Champs too. But I think, Benji, they kind of underperformed for the second half of the season after lockdown. Yes, you got Wiebes winning 3 wins, etc. There weren't actually that many pure sprint stages on offer after lockdown. But for the other riders, they didn't really, like Lippert, I know I follow her career closely, but she didn't step up the way I actually was expecting her to do. It seems like her best result was that at Cadel Evans, and she wasn't really at that level of Vos, and I don't mean even just beating her, I mean making that selection. But yeah, what did you see from them in the Giro Rosa, Benji? Am I being too harsh on them? Is there someone in this team you expected to be picking up wins as well, like Corin Rivera?
Yeah, that's one of the names that I did expect to do more in 2020. If we look at Corin Rivera for 2018 and 2019, obviously 2017 as well with RVV win, then she's very consistently gaining good results and wins. And if you look at 2020, she rode 1 race pre-COVID, that's Omloop, and then basically the women's season was also stopped for a while until it restarted in August. And in that Omloop, she got 34th. After COVID, she ended up getting 2 places in a top 5 at Giro Rosa in a sprint. And outside of that, there's just no result that I would see worthy of Corin Rivera comparing to 2019 and 2018, because on those levels, she's doing very well in Brabant. She's doing well in she did well in Valenciana in 2019 as well. So just a majority of results that I would expect her to be good at were not there in 2020. But I think we gotta take a step back and look at the fact that the races that she did do well at in 2019, 2018 are the races like the Ladies Tour of Norway, like Women's Tour, like the Lotto Belgium Tour, and all those were cancelled. So I think that plays a huge role in the kind of results that sprinters and Corin Rivera as sprinter / also a bit cobbly rider can offer. And I think that's where the lack of wins for her comes from. And when it comes to Liana Lippert, I also see the same thing, because she kept on consistently performing, like you mentioned with Cat 11's Great Ocean Road Race. But after that, she consistently scored podium places and top 5 places and top 10 places, but she never really got that win anymore. And I think she needs that tiny bit more to beat the likes of a Marianne Vos in certain occasions. And she's not really lucky with the opposition she has on the kind of tough terrain that she's good at, because obviously Anna van der Breggen is also kind of good at the terrain that Lippert is good at. So it's really hard to win those races if someone like van der Breggen is at the start every time. And finally, Lorena Wiebes, she's the one that got the most victories for the team, 4 I think in total. And the majority of those post-COVID, because, well, there's more races post-COVID than pre-COVID. And all in all, I do think she can achieve so much more if the races that have a lot of sprint stages, the stage races that have a lot of sprint stages, actually happen. Because, quite simply, I believe that she is the best sprinter in the world at the moment.
Yeah, so I agree with that. And I think even people like Grace Brown beat a duo of Floortje Mackay and Lippert at Brabantse Pijl. But what I was sort of trying to say was, it's not just about the wins, but I just don't remember them making the selection in a lot of the big women's one-day races either. And I went through and looked at the results, and that was the case. Here's the main group from La Course, and these names are going to be familiar to you: Dijkman Vos, Vollering, Nuviadoma, Van Vleuten, and Longoborghini. Lippert came 10th. Same sort of story in Flesch. She wasn't really there. Their best result was, I think, 9th. Same story in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Their best result, I think, was 10th. And it goes on and on. Even, I think, Tour of Flanders as well. Their best result, they had 12th. So for a team that I thought of as being maybe the top 4 or 5th team, they were really struggling to get top 10s in a lot of these World Tour level races. Gent-Wevelgem, 11th, Lorena Wiebes. And I think that is why I think it's an underperformance for 2020. They've got a lot of good riders and a lot of names I'm really familiar with and who pop their head out during races, but they just don't really have that standout, particularly with Corin Rivera not having as good a 2020 classic season. So they've got a lot to improve on. Lippert's super young. Lippert's young. Rivera's young. Is she? Relatively, they're all relatively young. They got young Brits as well. Like Rivera's still 28. So I expect them to do a little bit better next year in 2021. But let's talk about their transfers. Not too many. Alison Jackson's gone to Live Racing. Pernille Matheson and Anna Henderson have gone to Team Jumbo-Visma. Now, they were mostly domestiques for their team. I think Alison Jackson might have been... Is she the one that does the TikToks? I can't remember. She came 9th in 3 ducks.
I don't know.
So I think she might be the one that does the TikToks. I can't remember. But the big name I want to talk about is their incoming rider. Probably the biggest transfer that no one's talking about in cycling. Megan Jastrab, from the American, from Rally Women's Team, 19 years old, born in 2002. That's crazy. And
damn, I'm getting old.
Yeah, mate, how do you think I feel? She is fucking good. She is so good. First at Trofeo de Moreno, second at Gent-Wevelgem U23 or juniors, won 2 stages and a second in a stage, won the overall GC at the Healthy Aging Junior Tour, won the Women's Junior National Road Race for America, first in the Women's Junior Road Race in 2019. I've got no results for her in 2020 as showing on PCS, but I might just check for cycling. I mean, she's been in America for the whole time. She might not have been able to cycle, so I might just check that. But have you seen her? Do you remember her from the 2019 Yorkshire World Champs, Benji?
Yeah, it was a pretty mad race, and she ended up winning that pretty convincingly in a group sprint with the likes of Julie de Wilde. So as a Belgian, I was obviously kind of supporting for de Wilde, but how Jastrab won that was pretty crazy. And in that group, there's quite a bunch of riders that are pretty talented. Like Lino Bakstedt was also in that front group. We spoke about her before as well in the Trek Segafredo women's preview. I think that the transfers incoming are good at replacing the ones that are leaving. And I think that the fact that Jastrap is also kind of sprinty and is growing into, well, a pretty sprinty rider, but can also perform on other terrains, she can be of help for a lead out, for example, as well. Because if I recall correctly, Jackson, who is leaving, was lead out for Corn Rivera on a bunch of races. I do notice that when it comes to like Lorena Wiebes, she's a lot in the occasion where Leah Kirchmann is the last rider that brings her forward. And on most occasions that works well because Wiebes is just so much better than the competition that she's against in most of the sprints that she rides, because she blatantly can come from ninth position and still win the sprint. But I think with a proper setup and a proper lead out, she could be winning so much more. And riders like this adding on to the team could really help that if the tactical side improves in that aspect as well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see what Yastrab can do. I remember it was a great day for the United States of America. Quinn Simmons and Yastrab dominating the juniors. And we've seen Simmons is probably, he's legit at World Tour level, World Tour quality rider. I think he's confirmed that. And Yastrab, I'm sure, is going to confirm that and more, maybe even as soon as this year. I can't wait to see her and see how they use her alongside Lippert. And as you just foreshadowed what I was about to say, Benji, tactics. So you got Rivera, Lippert, Flochi Mackay, now Yastrab. Who are they? So now take an averagely hard cobbled race, Benji, which fortunately for the women is a lot of their good races because Flanders Classics do a good job for the women's races, I think. So a race like Brabantse Pijl, who are they riding for? Flanders, who are they riding for? What's their tactics? I saw in Brabantse Pijl, Mackay and Lippert, they weren't really, I didn't think they were working too cohesively together. Eventually, Lippert tried to bridge across on her own to Grace Brown. Would you pick one out of those riders, Benji? Would you run a strategy similar to the male Sunweb strategy or DSM strategy of just throwing attacks against the wall and eventually one will stick?
I think you've got an ideal kind of position as a team because you've got a rider that can do really well on these races, but also has a significant sprint. That's Rivera, but she would need to be better than 2020 and more leaning towards her performances in 2017, 18, and 19 to be able to achieve that. And if she can't do that, then she should not be leader in those races. And the others, I'd say that Lippert is more the attacking side. I dare to say she should attack a bit earlier, be part of those groups that get away earlier and see if that sticks. And then they've got a sprinter in the seat in the background for if that plan actually fails. But the problem is they need to sustain getting actually into that split because that's where they kind of failed in 2020. You mentioned it before. So if they can achieve getting into the split and having a sprinter up back, then it's strong. Jastrap can do kind of both. Perhaps in the first races, she should be part of the attacking force. And the reason for that is that people who are in the front group will not know her sprint qualities yet because they're obviously more known with the riders that have been riding with them for years now. And for Jastrap, that won't be the case. She'll be pretty new in those groups that get away. So perhaps riders who don't know her qualities when it comes to sprinting will be like, oh, I'll actually work with her. Who knows? I might actually win. And then they get swamped in the sprint. So I think that it might be a fun tactic to try and have Jastrap as well as a bit of an early attacker. Not necessarily super early, but in one of those elite groups that gets away at a certain point in the race. That's
Yeah,
kind of the strategies I'd be pointing at.
I agree, and I can't wait to see her in action. I think she's going to win some races this year, or at least change the course of some of them. But the main point really is, that's their cobbled team, or their sort of harder one day team is as I described. I think Kirchmann, Juliette Lebu, Lippert, Flochi Mackay, Corin Rivera, Jastrab, and maybe Julia Sook or Georgie Pfeiffer. Susanne Andersen is the Norwegian. She's good in the lead out for Lorena Wiebes. Very strong lead out rider. Flat races, it's pretty obvious they've got the best sprinter in the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not even close. I think she's way better than Becky and Julian Dor in a flat sprint. Wiebes wipes the floor with them.
And she's so young, like
yeah, I know,
like
21 years old.
this is for years to come.
I know. Well, you never know. You never know with sprinters. It can be there one year and then it's just gone the next. But yeah, 21 years old. I'd be surprised if it was gone the next. And she's won good quality races too. Like she won a World Tour stage at La Vuelta, won Driedachtse, won Groot Prix Jurmaat.
Do you think she can expand on what she can do so far? She's obviously the best sprinter in the world, but do you see terrains that she should dive into and try and get over as well? For example, Gent Wevelgem, I'm not sure if she has history with that race.
She came 11th. So the problem is that the way the women's races work is they don't have as strong a like say in the men's race, if they had like a premium sprinter for Gent Wevelgem and it's like HTC or Quick Step back in the day with Cav, they'd be able to throw someone like Terpstra, 2 engines, and just like 4 really strong guys who would be able to bring back a break. Further, in the men's racing, because the average speed is higher, it is more difficult for breakaways to go up the road because of the way drafting aerodynamics works. The draft benefit or the benefit from being in the bunch is relatively higher. So that's why women's racing is arguably more exciting at times, because breakaways often work or reduced bunches are often successful. And Gent Wevelgem's a good example of that in this year, where a group of sort of decent sprinters got away. Diagnan, Dor, Kopecky, Sarah Roy, Marta Cavalli, and Wiebes just didn't make that split, and the group wasn't strong enough to bring them back, and she didn't have enough riders to bring them back. And the smaller team sizes, I think, influenced that as well. So that's going to be a difficulty for her. That's my long way of saying, Benji, that even though I think she's actually okay at a lot of the classics, the structure of the way women's races plays out makes it more difficult for a pure sprinter like her to win. That's why we see someone like Kopecky, who's more like John Degenkolb, I think, is more likely to keep being successful, and I'm going to be pretty high on her in our preview of her team. What do you think about Wiebes?
Yeah, I think so as well. I just checked, and she actually got second into Gent Wevelgem in 2019. So if she can make the split, or at least if the group that she's in can make it back, then she honestly has a chance of winning such a race. I don't know if that lengthens further into the harder classics, though. I don't think that's really the type of rider that she is right now. She's really a pure sprinter, and I kind of like that aspect, because a lot of the women's cycling riders, they are specialized in multiple things. They are specialized in, well, they can do climbing, they can do punching, some can basically do it all. And to have someone that is specialized on one thing and absolutely destroy everybody on it, it's totally impressive for me.
Yeah, I love it. I think I like watching Wiebes ride, and I think she's going to have another great year. I think the more races, the better for her.
Yes.
But that's their sprint team. I think for the flatter Belgian races, I think it's pretty obvious for them, and that's why I think they are going to have a better year in 2021, because there's going to be more of those races being held. Now the question, Benji, is their stage racing team. I don't think Lippert is able to get over the big climbs with Longoborghini and co. I don't think she can, and I think that's La Course kind of showed that. Maybe I'm missing something, but I think for the Giro Rosa, she's going to need a very friendly parcours, like a rolly parcours, to be competitive on GC. I think she's their best GC option, apart from, I don't know, Megan Jastrab. Like literally, who knows what she can do? I would definitely take her. But yeah, I think Lippert's going to struggle if there's a decent mountain stage at the Giro Rosa, and then her TT obviously isn't as good as Van der Breggen or Van Vleuten either. So I think she's going to be struggling for a podium. I think they should go stage hunting in the break, to be honest, at the Giro Rosa. What do you think?
I agree on the aspect that they don't necessarily have someone that can take home a Giro Rosa or top five in the current situation. Leona Lippert is the kind of rider that I see more as getting over the hills, punchy hills, someone that really could do well in Ardennes and already does well at Ardennes. She got second in Brabantse, but that's a bit of a combination of cobble and hilling. La Flèche Wallonne was 8th, 10th for LBL, so can definitely perform on those races. But like you mentioned, at the end of Giro Rosa, we saw that on the bigger climbs, the above 15-minute climbs or something, there aren't a lot. We know that. So it's not a horrible weakness in women's cycling to not be good at the longer climbs, but it does come into play in Giro Rosa, and that's, I think, why she cannot achieve that top 10, at least in 2020, perhaps in 2021 if she gets a tiny bit better at that. But I wouldn't say that she's unable to get a top 5 in that. It all depends on the parkour and how the race plays out, and that's obviously the occasion on every single race in the world. So that statement is a bit, falsified in this sense. But outside of her, I would indeed say focus on both the attacks and the sprinting, because in the Giro Rosa, they can actually win the sprints. Plainly, Wiebes will have to handle a few mountain stage, hill stages in between, but the sprinting stage in between, she can definitely take home. But it doesn't necessarily need to be Giro Rosa for that. For me, I think we mentioned before that all these stage races have sprint stages, and a lot of them don't even have the hill or climbing stages.
Yeah,
So Wiebes has a lot of chance to win those stage races. It's difficult to talk about because in men's cycling, if we talk about stage races, we think about Tour de Suisse, we think about Dauphiné, we think about Tour de France, obviously, Giro, Vuelta.
sure.
In women's cycling, the only one that comes near a Grand Tour or the format of a Dauphiné or whatever is the Giro Rosa, and all the rest is kind of more flatter terrain. And I think that really comes into play, and that offers more opportunities for the sprinters as well in those races than necessarily outside of stage races, if that makes any sense.
I'd like to throw one name out there for
Mm-hmm.
a hilly stage race or a really hilly La Course is
Mm-hmm.
Juliette Lebeau, 22 years old, French national ITT champion. Although that says it was in the under 23s, but I thought it was in the. I'm pretty sure that was in the elites. Eighth at Liège and third on the probably the hardest climbing day of the Giro Rosa, stage 9. It had a climb of 14 k's 3%, 9 k's 4.3%, 9.1 k's 4.3%, and all up and down, and it finished on a climb of 6 k's 4.5%. I think even harder climbs would suit her more. She's very small, very skinny. Ninth at Amgen Tour California GC in 2018 at 20 years old, or even 19 years old maybe. So I think she could be their GC option in a harder stage race, more so than Lippert. I see Lippert as more of a one-day racer type rider, which nothing wrong with that, but just how I view it. What about the Olympics, Benji? I think, speaking of the Olympics, I think Lebeau is a good chance if she improves this year. Um, I think Lebeau is a good chance as well. I don't know how the Dutch team will. Well, I mean, they need to do much planning. It's going to be Van der Breggen and Van Vleuten going ham. But yeah, I think that course might suit Lebeau more than Lippert from what I've seen, particularly looking at that La Course right, race last year. But what else is there that you'd expect to see from Sunweb or DSM rather this year, Benji? Are there any other riders on the team that we're missing out that you think could take a step forward, or they could be used in a different way by the team, or in 2020 there were races that weren't held that actually really suit them?
I think I'm curious to see what Olafsson does when it comes to just plain time trials as well, but also looking into other races. She is only 19. She had a great 2019 season, but in 2020, the step to World Tour, she was not at a all-out godlike level, but she was like in the average aspect, and I think that I do believe that she can step forward And I'm curious what she can do when it comes to time trial in the elites in 2021. And that's like the name I'd set up as I'm looking forward to see what this 19-year-old can perform in 2021, because still 19, it's kind of crazy, but DSM in men's and women's cycling are both such young teams, and
Yeah.
it's so talented, and I think that we're gonna see a lot of people of this team perhaps step up and do stuff that we did not expect to see coming. And yeah, mainly like we mentioned before, I think Wiebes is the main spear point for the team, and I think she's gonna take the most of the wins for the team. I hope for the team that Corinne Rivera steps up and gets back into the form she was pre-2020, and that's the two riders I'd focus on together with Lippert and Mackay for the Cobble race as well. And those are the real four names that are currently at the top level of cycling, I think, for DSM, and can perform on a pretty consistent level. The rest is talent that can perform, and I'd like to see that talent perform.
Yeah, I think I'm hoping Lippert takes a big step forward. Maybe she will. She's still young. But yeah, she'll need to improve another step from where she was in 2020 to really be contesting the proper big World Tour one-day races. But now time for our hot takes and predictions. Over under 10 wins. I'm taking the over Benji solely because Lorena Wiebes is in the team, and I think she's crazy good and she's going to have a great season. What about you?
I think so as well. Wiebes is going to take like 7-8 wins at least, I think. So I really believe that. It obviously depends on what races get ridden and what don't. I do think that, unfortunately, like 2020, we might see a few races getting cancelled or postponed. I hope not, because, yeah, I want to see these cyclists ride as much as possible, and I think they want that as well, obviously. And if the races are ridden, then we're going to see a lot of victories by Wiebes, and I think she's going to be even more dominant in 2021 than in 2020, which is already crazy to think about.
I think Megan Yastrab is going to win a World Tour level race. That's my hot take. It's not that hot, but still, she's 19, first World Tour season, Neo Pro. It's still, I'm classifying it as a hot take. I think people will be sleeping on her a little bit. What about you?
I'm going to say that Lippert is going to podium LBL.
Okay, yeah, that is a hot take. If Van der Breggen and Van Vleuten exist, then and they're on different teams, then there's 2 of the 3 spots taken. So,
yeah,
that's a hot take. All right, that's been our Team DSM Women's preview for 2021. Let us know if there's anyone on the team that you think we're sleeping on that could really step up this year. Is there a reason why Rivera, who seems to have done pretty well in CX from what I've seen in the last 6 weeks, maybe didn't have as good a classic season in 2020 as before? We'd love to hear your thoughts. But thanks for listening as always, and we'll see you later. Ciao.